Remember when they said that if you took the jab and wore your mask, you'd get your freedoms back? How's that working out for you? Gibraltar is 100% vaccinated. Its entire adult population has had both doses. Technically, the territory is 118% fully vaxxed, because Spaniards enter every day for work reasons. Gibraltar has also enforced mandatory indoor mask mandates, and even for some time outdoors too, for over a year. Gibraltar is now experiencing what they're calling an exponential surge in COVID cases. Authorities have cancelled all official Christmas events and urged people to avoid gatherings. The most vaccinated place on earth could be about to go back under lockdown. 94% of Ireland's adult population is vaccinated. Ireland has enforced mandatory indoor mask mandates for over a year. Ireland has also enforced vaccine passports, meaning that only the fully vaccinated can enter venues like bars, restaurants and clubs. Ireland's COVID cases over the past month have soared by 275%. Ireland is now reintroducing partial lockdown measures such as a midnight curfew. They're expanding the vaccine passport scheme to cover other venues such as cinemas. They're also telling their population to go back to working from home. Despite getting the vaccine, complying with the vaccine passport scheme and wearing the mask, the Irish could be about to spend another Christmas under a full lockdown. Keep complying, idiots.
Boris Johnson has just announced that unless you've had your booster dose, you are no longer considered fully vaccinated. He also announced that the UK may go into a lockdown around Christmas unless people get their booster doses. Israel has done something similar. You cannot enter their country unless you've shown proof of booster dose. They also do not consider a person fully vaccinated on their COVID passports unless they've had 3 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. Both the UK and Israel are pushing booster doses because they've seen that even with high vaccination rates, COVID still spreads. They don't have the unvaccinated to blame. So now they blame it on the under-vaccinated. And what's more, they have no data to prove a booster dose stops the spread of the virus. It's too early to tell. The virus waned naturally in Israel, and we know this because it waned at the exact same time and in the exact same way in unvaccinated Palestine. And it likely will wane naturally in the UK as well once winter passes. We'll just have to wait and see. Meanwhile, news report after news report of fully vaccinated people getting COVID continues to pile up.
Now, our government officials talked about them not being particularly honest, not being particularly transparent. We invited them all here. Representatives from the heads of the CDC, Secretary of Defense Austin, Secretary of Labor Walsh, Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg, FDA Acting Commissioner Woodcock, HHS Secretary Becerra, NIAID Director Fauci, NIH Director Collins, together with the CEOs of Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, Pfizer, and BioNTech. None of them showed up. None of them showed up.
That's weird.
President Biden, for his part, in terms of honesty, July 21st, just a couple months ago, said if you're vaccinated, you're not going to be hospitalized. You're not going to be in an IC unit. You're not going to die. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. He said this is a pandemic on the unvaccinated. How I wish he was right when he said these vaccines were going to be that effective. But the fact is, they haven't been. If you take a look at what's happening in the UK over the last 7.5 months, and again, I wish we had data in the US so we could point to that data, but we don't. If they're collecting it, they're not sharing it with the American public. In the UK, over the last 7.5 months, 8% of their cases have been Delta variant. Of the people who have died from COVID in the UK with the Delta variant over the last 7.5 months, 63% have been fully vaccinated. Over the last 4 weeks in the UK, 78% of those that have died with the Delta variant from COVID, 78% have been fully vaccinated.
Wow. I mean, people wonder why. I mean, the credibility of these so-called experts is so shot, it's hard to imagine anyone still believing a thing they say. First of all, these shots are 100% effective against COVID. Full stop. And remember, even President Biden said in July, if you take the shot, you're not going to get COVID. And then all of a sudden in August, Walensky, the CDC director, said what these shots don't do anymore is protect against infection and transmission. But they're unbelievably great in preventing hospitalization and death. So you see the trajectory. And now, this is an interview. Let's put up this first clip. Because I'm sure that the Lou Rockwell was accurate, but I wanted to go to a transcript. This is the New York Times. They interviewed Tony Fauci on November 12th, so earlier this month. They interviewed him, and I read the transcript, and it's all accurate what was in Lou's site. Let's look at this next. Here are some quotes from Fauci about the shot. Let's look at that next clip. Talking about Israel, he said, they are seeing a waning of immunity, not only against infection, but against hospitalization and to some extent death, which is starting to now involve all age groups. It isn't just the elderly. So what he's saying is that the shots not only don't protect against infection, they don't protect against you getting super sick. And let's look at the next one. This is the same article. If you look at what has happened in countries that have been more ahead of us, i.e. more vaccines, temporarily, you see, more ahead of us temporarily, because we're catching up, you see that it wanes. And it's waning to the point where you're seeing more and more people getting breakthrough infections, and more of those people who are getting breakthrough infections are winding up in the hospital. Very clear what he says. And then the last one, let's look at that last clip, quote, and I'll send it back. Here he's talking to the interviewer. Then after saying that they don't work, he says, I think it would be a misrepresentation to say the vaccines don't work. He literally just got done saying they don't work. They don't protect against infection and transmission. He said that. They don't even protect against hospitalization and death. He just said that. So his conclusion is, let's do more of the stuff that doesn't work because you need an extra shot of the stuff that didn't work the first 2 times. So it's pretty astonishing that he gives us a little bit of truth, you know, and then...
You know, some of this story coming out with some studies in Israel, but it didn't change their pattern. They still continue to do the same thing over and over again. But from this article, I can see why you want to go back and check the original, because
I just couldn't believe it.
It's hard to believe. But here it says, in the United Kingdom, for example, between February and September of this year, a recent statistic, this year, 72% of all COVID-related deaths were among the vaccinated. Oh, great. And then they don't even know when you're fully vaccinated, because for a while, I swear, they were saying, you know, you're not fully vaccinated until you have 2 or 3 and this sort of thing. But that isn't the worst of it. In Scotland, the situation was even worse. 80% of COVID deaths occurred among those who had been injected with the vaccine. It's a sad story, and anybody who questions it, just discuss it. Let's have a discussion. Let's you show your points, we'll show our point, and you get painted as being unscientific, and they can destroy your life, you lose your job and everything else. It's a sad situation, even though we do see some signs that people are getting sick and tired of it enough, and we hopefully have a story on that today. Sick and tired enough where the people are just rebelling.
We would hope, and this is something that we're looking at very carefully, that 3rd shot with the mRNA not only boosts you way up, but increases the durability so that you will not necessarily need it every 6 months or a year. We're hoping it pushes it out more. If it doesn't, and the data show we do need it more often, then we'll do it.
בגל הזה אנחנו רואים הדבקות ותחלואה של מחוסנים. אנחנו רואים מחוסנים שחולים ומגיעים במצב קשה לבית החולים, ורואים גם תמותה. העלייה במספר החולים הקשה, המחוסנים, היא עלייה שראינו לאורך הימים האחרונים בצורה מאוד משמעותית.
והרוב הכמעט מוחלט של הנפטרים הם אנשים מחוסנים שכנראה עברו שחיקה חיסונית, 83 נפטרים רק בחודש האחרון.
עם זאת, בין המספר הזה שאנחנו רואים על המסך, יש גם 15 חולים שהם במצב קשה.
בוא נודה על האמת, כרגע לא באמת יודעים, כי אמר זאת בנט בעצמו בפתח דבריו, אין לנו ממי ללמוד. אנחנו המדינה היחידה שמחוסנת בהיקפים כאלה. בכל העולם זו התמודדות חדשה למדי, ולכן אנחנו צריכים לצבור עוד קצת דאטה, ואז להחליט.
אני היום לא רואה הבדל. באמת, לא רואה הבדל. אם אני בתור אחת שחוסנה בשני חיסונים, קיבלתי את זה בצורה כל כך קשה, אז מה זה משנה אם אתה עושה חיסונים או לא עושה חיסונים?
Formal group here, so and hopefully we can just be respectful and hear from as many people as we can, just by raising hands. If you just have a statement, we're happy to hear your statement. If you have a question, we'll be happy to try to answer questions too. So
I'm going to try to keep this short, but I'm going to put this from the perspective.
Can you speak loudly too? And I'll try to repeat.
I'm trying. So I'm going to try to keep this short. I'm going to put this from the perspective of a nurse who's been working in a hospital here locally. Last year, prior to the vaccines, about 1 in 5 patients came in with COVID. This year, in the hospital I've been working in, every single patient has COVID. Want to know what changed? The vaccines. Yes, that's right. How many of the patients came in with COVID or with fully vaccinated and vaccinated at all? Pretty much the majority. There were some unvaccinated, but very few. What we're also seeing are they're coming in with necrotic fingers and toes from the microclotting, necrotic intestines from microclotting, heart attacks, stroke, myocarditis, all of these heart and health issues, blood issues, all these issues, which we're then being asked to take upon ourselves by being mandated to get these vaccines. First of all. Secondly, the other thing that I'm seeing, and that we're seeing, watching these, the treatments for this COVID does nothing in the hospital. It does nothing for the COVID. Remdesivir does nothing, but it's not, and the studies prove it. If it isn't given within the first 3 days, it does nothing for COVID. But yet they give course after course after course of the remdesivir, and the patients end up with failure, all kinds of organ failure, kidney failure, liver failure. They're ending up with acute respiratory distress syndrome. They're ending up with pneumothorax. They're ending up with all of these issues caused by the treatment, not by COVID. They're not dying from COVID. They're dying from COVID.
Our sole priority is to ensure that our health service does not become overwhelmed. As a society, we need to look out for each other. 93% of the adult population are fully vaccinated. We have over 600 people in hospital at the moment, and roughly around half of those are unvaccinated. The evidence is absolutely clear, and tonight I would join with all of our healthcare professionals in urging people who have not yet received the vaccine to please take it up. More than anything, do it for yourself, because if you are not vaccinated, you are most at risk of getting seriously ill from this virus, and that is what the evidence is telling us. And I do understand that some people have concerns, so I would say to them, talk to your GP.